The HBO documentary, Private Violence, sinks its teeth into the disturbing and unfortunately all too common occurrence of domestic violence. Men beating, harassing, torturing, and dominating their wives and girlfriends is something that typically happens behind closed doors. And the ways in which men are able to get away with the abuse is surprisingly systematic, or part of our culture and justice system. The documentary follows Kit Gruelle, a victim's advocate based in North Carolina, as she comes into contact with a variety of domestic violence cases, including the case of Deanna Walters. Walters was beaten for years by her now ex-husband, Robbie, and in 2008, after leaving him, she and her daughter, who was only 2.5 years old at the time, were kidnapped by him and driven from North Carolina to California and almost back. During the 4+ day nightmare, Walters was continually beaten and almost suffocated and choked to death. Luckily, thanks to Robbie's lunacy of forcing Walters to call alleged men she had cheated on with him, the big rig they were driving was eventually pulled over by the police in Oklahoma. Astonishingly, Robbie was not arrested, but at least Walters and her daughter were taken to the hospital, where pictures were taken of Walters' gruesome injuries. Apparently, beating your spouse is not considered very serious on the spectrum of crime and punishment, but kidnapping definitely is. A husband can beat his wife for days on end to the point of breaking fingers on his very own hand and not face much discipline. From a misdemeanor to a felony, depending on how quote-unquote severe the injuries to the woman are. But take her against her will to another state, and now he's facing some serious prison time. This type of logic is difficult to rationalize. One of the first things that struck me in this potent documentary was how mentally and physically strong these women are. After being viciously beaten repeatedly over many years, they have the strength and stamina to still fight back. There is some kind of indescribable power buried deep inside of them that they all draw on in order to survive domestic violence. Unfortunately, too many women end up being killed at the hands of their abusers before they are able to fully realize that power. What is the common thread that creates an eventual domestic abuser? Were most of them physically or mentally abused as children, and they are now getting back at their abuser through their wives and girlfriends? Why are so many of these abusers physically large? I have never seen or heard of a small-statured domestic abuser. I was shocked that so many judges and lawyers and many others were making domestic abuse such a light or insignificant topic, as if being physically beaten was something everyone went through and is just the normal course of any relationship. I was under the impression, apparently misguided, that most people perceive domestic abuse as a horrible offense that ranked up there with rape, child molestation, and even kidnapping. However, based on this documentary, it seems that many people's perspectives are more along the lines of the thinking, or lack thereof, of the Dark Ages. If a woman is being beaten, she should leave. And if she doesn't, then whatever happens to her is her own fault, seems to go the thinking. The oftentimes ineffectual restraining order was also put on full display, as Gruelle in one scene slaps down a stack of former orders that all ended up with the women being killed by their abusers. If a woman says her abusive husband or boyfriend is going to kill her, then perhaps we should listen to her before it's too late. Gruelle is a captivating protagonist because of her gravitas, being open about her experience surviving domestic violence, and her commitment to the work she does. The jolts of emotion that shock her face as she navigates each abuse case are palpable. Women trying to face their abusers need an advocate like Gruelle, and hopefully this documentary will open more people's eyes to the reality of how our justice system deals with abusers and the changes that desperately need to be made.